Well, we are here in the most beautiful kitchen in Central Illinois. We're so excited to be here with Laura Finke. We're talking all things bread for those who are on that bread journey. I know you've been on a wonderful bread journey. I've loved following you on social media. Before we dive into all things bread, tell me about your gorgeous kitchen.
Oh gosh, well, it's a complete total gut remodel that Lindsay Boughton with Lindsay Boughton Design helped us do, and she's amazing. And it's just literally the kitchen of my dreams. So
yes, mine too. It is absolutely stunning, and we're so excited to be here. Now, I follow so many people on social media that have been like on this bread journey. I think it's a thing right now. You seem to be kind of the expert of the bread journey.
I don't know about that, but
So tell me what you like to make when you're making bread, when you're mixing that together. What are you liking to make these days?
Well, I mean, the traditional sourdough recipe, which is just that basic loaf, is always just a great place to start. Once you get that and you master that, then you can venture into so many different things like, pumpkin and cream cheese and, jalapeno and cheddar, and just there's so many great things you can make. But that traditional loaf is kind of where I started and where I really encourage most people to start.
So once you have that down, you can have kind of, I can
oh
do
my
this,
gosh, then you can
branch out.
Oh gosh, then there are endless possibilities. Then you can add whatever you want. You can mix in some whole grains. You can you can make it, healthier. There is even gluten-free sourdough. Which is something I want to dive into at a later date. But there's just so many things you can do with it. But that traditional loaf is probably, I would say, master the basics. And then you can go from there.
So what do we have in front of us here?
So these are all the supplies really that you'll need. I mean, if you get on the internet and look for sourdough, you will be overwhelmed, inundated, and feel completely like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. And so just to make it simple for people, because that's really where you need to start, and to have it be as simple as you can, you need a bowl. I got this only because you can see the dough as it rises. So this is just kind of a neat, and get these anywhere. But you could just use a bowl. You don't have to use this. You could use any ceramic bowl you have. And then you need, I use a dough hook to mix. Again, your hands are the most useful tool in the kitchen. So you can use your hands or a mixer if you have a mixer. I find this just to be so much easier. And then parchment paper. This is a banneton. After you mix your dough, you stick it in there and it'll rise, and that keeps its shape.
Okay, what are our first steps if we were to mix things together here?
Okay, so the first step is just, you want me to do it for you here? Okay.
I'll watch you do it.
So the most important tool in the kitchen when you're making bread is a scale, a digital scale, because you have to have, there's some science involved. So it's the easiest thing. It keeps the mess down. So you just put your bowl on the scale, and then you start with your water. And I pre-measured this.
And you have it in grams.
Yes, in grams. You want to measure always in grams. So that's $2.99. You don't have to have everything so exact. It's a little forgiving in that way. And this is the starter, which is the differentiator in sourdough. This basically takes the place of traditional yeast that you use. So this is what makes your bread taste like sourdough.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to
zero
that out. And you can see the bubbles. This is just, a starter is just flour, water, and bacteria in the air. That's all it is. And together that forms these bubbles that work through the flour. And see, now I've put a little too much in there, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal.
Even
that, sometimes I would pull that out, but it's forgiving. And then salt, 10 grams of salt. So that was 150 grams of starter. 300 grams of water, now 10 grams of salt. Some people say, don't put your salt in until the end. Listen, I do everything very simply. You can do it this way. Like, it's simple. People make it way more than it needs to be. And then about 450 grams of flour. And I pre-measured this. So, and again, that's a little over, no big deal.
Wow, that's
And then
awesome.
you pull it off, and then you could use your hands. Again, this dough hook, you can get these anywhere. People don't know where these are. They're Amazon anywhere. And you just mix until you get this shaggy type dough. And then, you can kind of see, I just leave it in here. So there are basic 5 steps to sourdough. You mix your ingredients, you let it rise. You form your bread after it's risen, you form it into a ball, you let it rise, and then you bake. Now, there are some different techniques you can use in the middle, but that, I don't want to overwhelm people. That is that's just the basics. And that works. And then you can get into doing more.
And how long will you let it rise for?
Great question. So That depends on the temperature in your kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like in the summer, things move so much quicker because the humidity in the kitchen, you know, in your home, even when you have the air on, it'll just make things rise faster.
Yeah.
So right now in the winter, I mean, it could go several hours longer. So a typical rise time would be anywhere from 3 hours to 6 for your first rise.
Okay.
Then you make your loaf,
Okay.
put it in the Banneton, and then you let that rise again. I typically put it in the fridge overnight so it's easy.
Yeah.
The majority of the time here is really time on the clock, and it's not your time. It's time that it takes for the dough to rise. So it's really not near as time consuming as people make it seem.
Yeah.
It's not. Like you can get a fresh loaf of bread.
Approachable.
It is. So it is. That's one thing I want people to know. I get messages all the time like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Or I could never do that. No, everyone can do it. Yeah.
I feel inspired.
Well, good, Grace. Yeah. And I mean, who doesn't love a nice, hot, fresh loaf of bread? I mean, it's a wonderful thing for your family or to gift, which I love to do.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I love to get, and we're approaching the holidays. Like,
absolutely.
You know, how fun to, you know, gift a loaf of bread.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, while we let this sit, but when we come back, we'll get a sneak peek of what the final product can look like.
Perfect.